In a city built on risk, very few played the game like Frank Lefty Rosenthal, the man who turned the Stardust Resort into a mobbed-up money machine. This is the real story of the man who ran Las Vegas from the shadows, and the casino that became his kingdom, then his curse. Hello! Okay, so I hope we don't mind another Las Vegas mob video. When I was researching that Las Vegas video, there was just story after story after story, so I decided to make a few little spin-offs to flesh things out a little more. So if you want to know where this story fits in the grand scheme of things, I do recommend watching that video. It's called When the Mob Ran Las Vegas. That one is kind of the overview of the entire mob Las Vegas story, and now we're kind of splintering off that one. What I love about this story is that the Stardust Casino is a character in its own right, watching as fortunes are made or taken and secrets are buried beneath the carpets. Between skimming operations, starting an entire television show, and a car bomb that nearly ended it all, this is the tale of Frank Lefty Rosenthal and the Stardust. Frank Lawrence Rosenthal was born in June 1929 in Chicago, which, as luck would have it, was the perfect place for a boy with a mind for betting odds and a heart for adrenaline. So when he was just a little kid, he learned all about sports betting on the bleachers of Wrigley Field, and he would often skip school to attend sporting events. On top of that, his father owned racehorses, so he became familiar with betting odds and the math, the algorithm behind it all at a very young age. He was extremely smart. Like, he could execute the type of mental math that would make a nun, like, hold up a crucifix and run the other way. He would even later be called the greatest living expert on sports gambling. By the time he was 19, he already had a widespread reputation in Chicago for this ability he had to calculate big numbers and accurately predict winners. And when someone in Chicago around this time has this sort of potential, this super genius math mind and ability to make a lot of money, it's going to attract the attention of the Chicago outfit. So by the time he was in his 20s, Lefty had transformed into one of the country's most brilliant illegal bookmakers, aka like a person that accepts and pays out bets. And when I say illegal, I mean the kind of illegal that made the FBI angry, but also really impressed. By his mid-20s, Lefty was one of the country's top handicappers, which, okay, I learned was like not a Tanya Harding thing. It's more of a person who analyzes sporting events to offer betting advice. And surprise, surprise, Lefty became a huge asset to the Chicago outfit for their illegal gambling operations. In the mid-50s, he ran the biggest illegal bookmaking office in the nation on behalf of the outfit. They were based in Cicero, Illinois, under the guise of a home improvement company, but in reality they would buy contracts to fix sporting events, which would of course lead to Lefty being indicted as a co-conspirator on a bunch of sports bribery charges. So now he's starting to feel the heat, and so am I because my hair is still not fixed. So Lefty moves his entire operation to Miami to get away from the police attention he was attracting in Chicago. But when you are this good, this naturally gifted at something, you are going to attract attention for it no matter where you go. And by 1961, Frank Lefty Rosenthal had a national reputation as a sports bettor and handicapper. So around this time, he was issued with a subpoena to stand before U.S. Senator John McClellan's subcommittee on gambling and organized crime, and he stood accused of match fixing. Lefty invoked the Fifth Amendment 37 times. 37. And he was never charged with anything, but he was banned from all racing establishments in Florida. Now, he was pretty frequently arrested for gambling and bookmaking, but he was only ever convicted once. He pleaded? Is it pled or pleaded? No contest in 1963 for allegedly bribing a New York basketball player to essentially throw the game. But he didn't do any jail time or anything like that, which we will come back to later. Now, meanwhile, in the 1960s, the New York mob had moved out of Las Vegas for reasons that we discussed in the Las Vegas video, and the Chicago outfit had moved in. At that point, Lefty was obviously banned from racing properties in Florida, and he was really feeling the heat down there, so in 1968, he ends up in Las Vegas. And at first, he was investing in a lot of local businesses, which made him a lot of connections, so he moved up the ladder there very quickly. Now we move to 1974. A man named Alan Glick buys the Stardust Casino Resort. But all is not what it seems. Because again, we talked about it in the Vegas video, but his corporation Argent was actually a mob front. The mob were buying up these resorts with Alan as their front man, their puppet essentially, and they were buying them all with the Teamsters Union pension fund. Now, Lefty, who, mind you, did not have a gaming license, was still brought in to run the Stardust. Now, officially, he was the food and beverage manager. Unofficially, he ran the entire joint, every table, every bet, every shift change. The Stardust Casino under Lefty was not a casino, it was a machine. Every second was calibrated, every employee was trained like a soldier. Chefs were instructed to put minimum 10 blueberries in every blueberry muffin. If you've seen Casino, you know showgirls had to sparkle just the right amount. And if anyone were caught trying to cheat, it was not pretty. Now, again, if you've seen the movie Casino, which is based on this story, you'll know. But okay, the scenes where they smash a guy's hand with a hammer, and listen, there's no perfectly graceful way to say this, and I don't even know if I can say it because this is YouTube, but the Vice scene, I shan't say it. Google it if you dare, but be warned, it is horrific. Anyway, those scenes were not far from reality. Some would even later say that they did a lot worse, which, how does it get any worse? But as brutal as Lefty was, he brought in big money, and that was the name of the game. He had enough connections to bring in the biggest high rollers. He created the very first sports book to ever operate from within a casino. He also hired female blackjack dealers, which alone doubled the casino's annual income. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure he was the first to hire female blackjack dealers, but I could be wrong on that one. And he would just watch. He would watch the entire casino floor, noticing if a pit boss moved even 2 inches too far to the left. He was obsessed with integrity in like a criminal money laundering kind of way. He ran a tight ship, and the profits were astronomical. And even though the casino is raking in cash, the mob are gonna be the mob and take some for themselves. The Stardust was home to a massive skimming operation. Essentially, the mob were embezzling money from the casino. Multiple casinos, really, but mainly the Stardust. Lefty oversaw the resort, of course, but he also oversaw the skim, aka the theft of millions of dollars. So the customers' money would go into the back room to be counted, but before that could happen, some shady figures would go in and take their cut, filling black briefcases to the brim. And that was only one way they would embezzle money. Sometimes they would falsify their earnings, other times they would stage robberies. Either way, the Stardust became synonymous with underworld dealings, seducing tourists by day and laundering mob money by night. So now let's talk about love, or something like it. In 1968, Lefty met Jerry McGee. She was a gorgeous showgirl, the type of woman to make men forget their own names. She had style, charm, a weakness for chaos. She was the perfect match for Lefty. May 4th, 1969, so not long after they met, they got married. She drank and did drugs. He bought her fur coats. She ran off with other men. He put security cameras in her bedroom. Romance. Their relationship was volatile, and Lefty's obsession with control started to unravel. You can manage a casino, fix a sports book, even intimidate a state gaming board, but you can't micromanage heartbreak. Now, any story worth telling needs the wild card, and that was Tony Spilatro. a childhood friend of Lefty's and an enforcer, aka like murderer, for the mob. And he showed up in Vegas to help Lefty out and also ensure that the skimming operation was going the way it needed to go. Listen, this guy was crazy does not even begin to begin. If Lefty was all brains and precision, Tony was blunt force trauma. Tony was also full of ego and went far beyond what his bosses asked of him. He wanted to be king of Vegas. He worked in extortion and loan sharking, even charging street taxes from other mobsters. He also brought in his own gang, and they would rob local businesses by cutting like holes in the walls so the alarm systems wouldn't sound. But Tony brought heat. FBI heat, newspaper heat, bodies buried in the desert heat. So eventually the friendship between Tony and Lefty broke down. Tony got too messy, Lefty got too nervous. And by wiretapping the places they frequented, the feds got just enough evidence. In 1976, police and the FBI discovered that Lefty was secretly running 4 casinos, so not just the Stardust, but also the Hacienda, the Fremont, and I believe the Marina? I'm like 90% sure it was the Marina. And he was doing so without a gaming license, which you obviously needed to run a casino, let alone 4. So they held a hearing to determine if he would be eligible to get a license. And this hearing was headed by Nevada State Gaming Commission Chairman Reid. And he was determined to end mob influence. And it was a hot freaking mess. Lefty started losing his mind at Harry, saying that he had done him a favor and that they had gone to dinner together. He was trying to get Harry to admit that they had gone to dinner together, and Harry wouldn't. And then he said that he had promised him he would get his license, and now he's not. And you can see the whole thing on YouTube. If I can figure out how to link it, I will. But now with this whole deranged rant, the court of public opinion is very much starting to sway against Lefty. But he was apparently denied his license because of his ties to organized crime, especially Tony Spilatro, his childhood friend who already had a really bad reputation. But did any of that stop Lefty? No, he changed his job title once again, which was something he did fairly often to try and fly under the radar. So now he calls himself the entertainment manager, which obviously didn't require a license, but obviously he is still running the whole thing. But to try and sell this whole entertainment role, he started his own television show. That's right, he filmed the Frank Rosenthal show at the Stardust, and it was like a variety show, and he would have celebrities on like O.J. Simpson, wild choice but okay, Frank Sinatra. And he would also use his new television platform to rant about the Nevada Gaming Commission and how badly they treated him. Now it's unclear why this show went off the air. Some people think it just had low ratings, some people think the Chicago outfit didn't like the exposure, but either way, it was dropped. And from here, things just piled on for Lefty. The rift between him and Tony was irreparable. I mean, Tony had basically cost him the ability to get his license by being absolutely insane. And in 1978, Jerry, Lefty's wife, remember, she admitted that she had been having an affair with Tony. So now Lefty and Tony are both fearing that one will take out the other, or that the mob will take them both out because this is getting too messy. And at one point, Tony allegedly had already dug Lefty's hole in the desert, which, if that's true, is very ironic considering what happens later. Now we move to October 4th, 1982. By many accounts, this should have been the end of this story, and by some miracle, it was not. So Lefty was leaving a restaurant. He got into his car, tried to start the engine, but when he did, a car bomb went off. The car engulfed in flames, and some crazy how, Lefty walked away with minor injuries. Apparently, that particular model of Cadillac had a metal plate under the seat to correct a balancing issue, and also to shield the driver from heat from the catalytic converter, whatever. Shield the driver from heat from that thing. And that plate saved Lefty's life. I mean, that and probably sheer stubbornness. A witness said that upon exiting the car, Lefty was shouting, "They're trying to kill me," over and over. But when she asked who, he wouldn't say another word. No one was ever charged for the assassination attempt. It's thought that a Milwaukee mob boss did it, angry about the legal problems that mob-owned casinos were having and blaming Lefty for it. It's also thought that obviously maybe Tony did it. In November 1982, so only about a month later, Jerry died from an overdose at 46 years old, but not before divorcing Lefty and stealing a bunch of his savings. Lefty moved away from Las Vegas only 6 months after the car bomb. Las Vegas had been his whole world, but now he had finally had enough. In 1987, he was formally banned from all Las Vegas casinos and placed in the Black Book, right beside Tony Spilotro, who had been there for a few years. Speaking of Tony, in the same year, he and his brother were found in a cornfield, beaten nearly to death, and buried alive. Jesus. Lefty moved to California to focus on raising his children, but later moved back to Miami to run a sports betting website because times change, but some things stay the same. His life also became the basis for Martin Scorsese's 1995 movie Casino, which we have talked about a couple times now. The movie was flashy, dramatic, and fairly accurate according to Lefty himself. Frank Lefty Rosenthal passed away in 2008 at 79 years old from natural causes. No fanfare, no fireworks, just the end of an era. 2 years earlier, the Stardust Resort went the same way, closed and later demolished. Later on, it was apparently declassified that Lefty was actually an FBI informant, which is why he could get away with so much for so long, which, okay, make of that what you will, but it does make sense. Not many people live that life for that long without some sort of protection. But in Las Vegas lore, his spirit still looms, not because of the movie or the car bomb, but because he changed Vegas. He made sportsbooks mainstream, he brought organization to a chaotic industry, and he did it all without ever having a gaming license. Was he a genius? Was he a gangster? Probably a little column A, little column B. So next time you walk through a casino, glance up, because somewhere a camera is watching. And if it's run with a hint of paranoia and zero tolerance for nonsense, you might just feel his ghost nodding in approval. And that is all I have for today. I hope you liked my tale. Thank you for coming over, and as always, if you have any story ideas, please feel free to comment them so I can see what you want to see. And with that, I will see you next week. Toodaloo!